Okay. Hi guys, welcome to the women panel. And our speakers, girls, maybe we start this small introduction, yourself and your company, and how have you lived with COVID crisis? Let's start with Carly.
Hello, I'm Carly Howard, and I am a consultant providing outsourced CLO and COO services, investment firms and companies. Currently, I am working with Fathom, FATHYM.com, a US-based technology company. We have a low-code platform for orchestration and development. So if developers want to cut down on their Azure time, our platform is great for doing that. And I've been doing the legal operations work for family office backed. But I'm based in Berlin. Often help investors in the US find opportunities in Europe, particularly in the startup scene. And I'd say that we've dealt with COVID in Europe a bit differently from America. So it's been really interesting for me to see how the clients I have here and the clients I have there are reacting to COVID based on how different things are in their areas. And so we can talk about that a bit today when we talk about startups. And I would also say that with regard to Fathom, our company is completely distributed. So before COVID started, we were already remote, and we did not miss a beat. We continued working full speed COVID crisis, and because our company is tech-driven, efficiency, bringing things online, digitized kind of companies that are so in style right now, with COVID shaking things up, we've been able to have been before. So I can definitely talk a little bit about that, how perspective on those kinds of startups has changed by working with one of them. I'm an attorney, and I had a career of over 15 years in law investment before moving into venture capital and helping to grow companies. So I'm really thankful to be here today. That experience.
Okay, and welcome Anu, and welcome Christiana. Christiana, are you ready for this short introduction, please? Are you on?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah.
She's so excited that she's on mute.
Yes, thank you. But nice to see your beautiful face, Anu, again. So yes, my name is Christiana Viva, and I am co-founder of Act Ventures. Act Ventures is a consulting consortium. So different facets of consulting, but focused on investments into emerging technology and also into emerging markets. So the past 5 years, we have been focused mainly on Asia and Latin America for investment opportunities. And with the last 3 years, my particular focus is a department that's focused on digital transformation. So we call our process digital footprint strategy. And it's basically identifying what your brand, your culture, and how it's represented online, specifically for the context of going to market. So if you want to enter, similar to what Carly does, enter Europe or Asia or Latin America, we focus on Asia and Latin America. We can help you identify what your brand currently is compared to your competitors, and therefore, have a strategy, which is super relevant for COVID-19. And as similar to what Carly said, we have been a distributed consortium style group for right now over 5 years. So definitely used to working remotely And most of our clients, we service their needs from distributed teams. So that being said, it still has been a challenge because, you know, being remote is different from being confined to your home. So that I've never been incarcerated. Glad happy to say.
I hope not.
So that was a little bit of a shocker, but thankfully with tools like this, with conferencing, you know, before I used to have calls, now it's always video, at least the first 20 minutes, because we want to see someone else's face. So it's really interesting, and I'm super excited to hear more from Carly as well, because I'm curious. We actually have a product now in our group that we are launching in Europe first. So I'm really curious, and with her legal background, so it's actually involved with broadcasting with IP. So we are very similar to, and I want to give Anu a chance to give herself, but similar to the way maybe for digital assets, if you're smart, you want to go to the most highly regulated space. You want to come to the US and get approval from the SEC. Similarly, for this one product we're launching, Europe is very, very strict with IP, with sharing information. And so we want to be okay in that space first.
Hold on, I need to find the Zoom screen. Yes, Arya, I'm upstairs. Come on up. Come on up. Hey, Manana. Hi, Carly. Christiana, how are you, ladies? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? So I have a share screen. I have 1 second, please. 1 second. We're having real technical difficulty. I'm so sorry. Basically, I am in the process of launching the State of Women podcast network. This is something that we started developing during COVID. And I had a slide that I wanted to share with you. Manana, am I able to share screens? I'm on a Zoom call. Come here, say hi.
No, I would like you.
Not now.
Mila needs it.
Okay, so where can I share the screen? I'm so sorry.
Right. I will bark at some point during this call.
1 second.
Happening, yes.
Can you see my screens or no? Are you able to see my screens or no?
I don't see your screen. Manana, you might have to give everyone permission to share screen in order for that to happen.
Okay. Hang on.
Anu, can you just give us a breakdown on what it is as we
Oh,
deal with
absolutely. I'll just jump in. I can't get the screen to open. So the State of Women Podcast Network, it's 150 global podcasts that have been aggregated onto one platform. It's going to be launching in about, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks from now. It's a mobile app. So podcasts led by women, for women, 5 continents. We've got content from Australia, for all across Europe, North America, Canada, of course, Canada and the US. And basically, if you think about the apps that are out there right now, like iHeartRadio or Spotify or iTunes, you've got these apps that are not exactly targeting sub-Saharan Africa or Asia or some of these other demographics, and the connectivity is really difficult. And what we're working on now is trying to get these apps out to women and girls who are probably not able to access education right now. So these are educational in nature, and really getting content around entrepreneurship, investing, technology, things that we all are passionate about, we care about, but how do we get that level of learning out to these demographics that are now, like, you know, doing what we're doing on Zoom calls and learning from home. And so it's a different way. It's audio, it's podcasts, and ultimately, like women, we when we're either taking care of our families, cooking, driving kids to school or work, moms like myself, like we rely on sometimes audio in terms of learning. So that's what I've been working on. And we've gotten pretty far. We've partnered with Women in Artificial Intelligence. It's a network of 4,000 women in AI. We've partnered with Women in Data and Analytics, and they have 14,000 women around the world that are focused on data collection. So ultimately what's gonna happen is we're gonna get data from listening patterns that we can share with ministries of education, ministries of health. And I think if we look at it from that perspective, is what are we learning and how can we use that data from what we're learning to actually access agencies and organizations and help them move policies and programming. So that's what we're currently working on. And this was all during COVID. So we hadn't put this together prior to, I want to say March 1st. We did our pivot around that period of time, but that's been our
pivot. Can you explain pivot from what?
So Women Investing in Women Digital, initially, it's always been a media company. We've done events, we've done summits, seminars around the world, and this has been going on for about 5 years. So some of you, I met a majority of you in Miami on this Zoom call. Manana, you and I met in New York, but basically it was, we were doing events with crypto queens and women investing in women since 2014. And then we did the shift where in 2015, we started a Facebook group for 500 of our attendees. That Facebook group is now 990,000 followers around the world. This is just a news feed. We're not an active group. I don't moderate anything. Christiana, you know this, like I have a Telegram channel or whatnot, but who has time to engage all day long and respond and whatnot? So what we did is the Facebook feed has just been a repository for content that is relevant. You can check in at any time and read whatever you want to read, but there's always content that's current and relevant around new funds that are being started, new initiatives that are being started. And there's so much happening in the women's space, it's hard to keep current. And until now, it's always been print content that we focused. And we had a website called thestateofwomen.com that aggregated our social, our events, our different newsletter content that was going in there. But in 2014, we started a podcast called Women Investing in Women and Girls. And this podcast was co-hosted by my babysitter at the time, my daughter, who's sitting right here. She was 2.5. And then our nanny was the producer. And so we did this one podcast with Voice America Kids and did about 100 shows. We had guests from all over the world, women entrepreneurs, investors, and ultimately, till this day, Voice America Kids has us still on their platform. And we had been planning all of last year to start bringing in new content, podcast content, for the State of Women radio network, but never realized that we were going to blow up during COVID. Like this was not in the plan. And originally, we had thought of having like 2 or 3 shows being added. And I did a post on another Facebook group, and within an hour, I got 150 responses saying we would like to be on your network. And we signed everybody on. And now we're at the point where we're like, okay, we're going from 3 to 150. And the next step is once we automate on our mobile app, like how people can unload their digital content, that can easily scale to like 1,000. And potentially even blow up even more. So we're now at this phase where we're getting ready to raise a seed round. It's time, like the tech is there. And I found out from one of our partners that 100,000 new podcasts were started in April 2020, this year. Like while we're all sitting at home, people are like, oh, should I write my book? Should I do my podcast? What should I do? And so about 70% of those are women. And we feel like we're in the right place at the right time. So we're taking existing infrastructure, like what we had before in terms of our social audience, our global reach, and then positioning it in this space where there really aren't a lot of women-led podcast networks. Like Spotify is Daniel Ek, and Bob Pittman was iHeartRadio, and they've got other media networks that are majority led by men. But this opportunity to get our voices out there, to get content by us, for us out there to get analytics that's relevant to our community. I think the timing is now, and especially with COVID, we don't know where we're reaching, underserved or migrant populations. And many of these people happen to be women and girls who are at risk, that don't get the information. And that's how disease spreads. So if they're at risk, we're all at risk. And so how do we take care of our sisters? And that's basically what this is about.
Okay, thank you. And my first question, what should be on the top of the focus for the startup female founders and investors in this crisis? Let's start, or maybe Carly.
Yeah, so you were cutting out a little bit, but I think you're asking some advice for startup of COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What should be in focus?
Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to say something that is not typical, which is that life will return to normal. I know that there are a lot of analysts and a lot of scientists and people talking about how long this pandemic is going to last, and we're already seeing a second wave in many places. There's no doubt that is a concern, but you can already see with trends in the stock market. You can already see with some of the trends in investing and just the way that our friends and family are behaving. People really want to return to normal. So I think if you can just get through, there will be a period where there's a fast growth. There's definitely concerns about large unemployment and people having a hard time going back to work. All of that's very, very real. But for startup founders, I think if we can just get through, there will be a period soon where everyone is really ready building again. So I'm looking forward to that. We're already seeing it a bit in Europe. It's definitely the case that the Valley is very slow to invest. We've seen a lot of deals go through, even in the United States, that were already started before COVID, but new deals have come to a halt in some places and are very slow in most others. And it's not to say that it hasn't slowed here in Europe either, but there's definitely a lot of movement here. The end here is to be fairly risk adverse anyway. Particularly here in Germany, investors tend to be more cautious than they are in the US. So while everyone is cognizant of the way that COVID is the way we live, affecting travel, affecting various industries and whatnot, within the tech space, the investors here in Europe are still, for the most part, ready to invest. So for investors as well, look broad. US, look at Europe and look at global trends right now, because it's going to take global efforts to get us through COVID.
Nice. I definitely agree with that. I do think things will never be the same again, definitely. But I think things are changing in a way that, just like a small example, but just like after 9/11, we all take off our shoes in the airport, and we continue to take off our shoes in the airport. That's one small thing, but life at airports will never be the same again, right? And I think here, with this influx of online action and noise, right? There's definitely a different style of work that is now possible, and companies, especially the older ones, are getting savvy to this new style of work. But I definitely do agree with you, Carly, in the sense that, keep calm and carry on, right? We must move forward. And I think what's upsetting to me is that, Korea and Asia was weeks in advance from our outbreak over in the States and in Europe. However, the lack of collaboration and communication with data and how it progressed over there had us go through the same mistakes. And so I do think if we stay calm, if we, continue, I don't know exactly what the correct strategy is to deal with COVID-19, but keeping in mind that the landscape of the digital space has changed, and even the landscape of work has changed. But we do need to keep moving step by step forward.
You mentioned something earlier, Christiana, that I think is really important, which is that remote home. And I think that that's something to consider with regard to, what does the future look like? What does normal look like? There were a lot of companies that were forced, of course, to allow their and forced to look at the technology that would support. And I was hearing a lot of feedback from people who said, I don't like working from home. And I said, well, it's not usually like that. I've been thing for over 4 years now, and usually you can work from home in the evening or something. But I do agree that your airport example was spot on. I do. We're probably gonna end up somewhere in the middle where we were really stuck in the office before, stuck at home, and so we'll probably end up somewhere in the middle. Have
I like that.
Yeah, just options as to where to work from, where to go into office are to be more important. We'll specially choose what's in person, and what meetings we put resources into to be in person, and that will probably be the taking your shoes off at the airport example. And I find this to be really interesting in tech, because companies is different, but also our companies to people will need to consider as you're starting a company, as you're adjusting your startup in what is the new normal. I don't like 2008. An attorney in banking when that whole thing happened, and everyone was talking about the new normal. Bad.
Yeah, PTSD, right?
Yeah, no more new normal. Let's
yeah.
Let's call it something else. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely hi. Okay, I got my nephews in the house. They are running around and they love to make noise. But they're so cute. But this is what we're doing everything for, right, guys? Our little nephews. And so yeah, on what you said as well, I think the opportunity, Manana, you asked what are the opportunities for startups in this situation. Now, if you think about any corporate company, right? Any event, and Anu's in the event space, right? So they've agreed to be part of an event. They've allocated budget. These things happen months in advance. Anu, I'm sure you get Samsung at your event. You're asking them 6 months in advance. They're committing to this year and next year and the following year, right? So what happens with these corporations is that, okay, now they're retracting budget and they have to reorganize. And that takes time and bureaucracy and red tape and the signature from the guy on top, right? Or the female on top, right? But I think this is a great call to technology, emerging technology, to say, listen, step up your game, take this tipping point, because other companies cannot transform the way you can transform. Innovation in startup can happen very fast compared to huge corporations, which has to get budgets signed off, things changed, things agreed to. So a smaller player, let's say remote working, there's been lots of, and we're actually using Zoom, but there's been a lot of security concerns with Zoom. Well, Zoom had to jump from 10 million users to 200 million users, right? So imagine the need in the marketplace, and that's not only for video conferencing, but we're talking about remote work. But imagine, different companies now have the opportunity to say, hey, I can satisfy this need in the marketplace that's growing drastically. And yes, it's not going to be as drastic as today. It is going to be meeting in the middle, I believe, as well. But the startups have an opportunity. maybe slightly pivot what they were offering and pivot what is needed in the marketplace today, they can do it faster than corporations.
I'd like to build on that a little bit by pointing out that startups forming now or looking to adjust need to take a really look at the legal and regulatory framework. And Anu, you and I met in the blockchain where these kinds of things, the domicile company is big time. And I think it's going to matter for any startup that's involves big data, involves AI, et cetera. For example, here in Europe, where we have GDPR, and there are a number of countries here, including Germany, where I live, where data privacy is paramount, and there are a lot of rules around it. It can make developing certain types of technology very difficult, of course. There are countries like China and the United States are the obvious examples where there's a lot of data, and companies are able to use that, even if the consumer, the user, doesn't even know about it. We all know about this, but in the COVID context, it becomes very important. We saw just this week in Germany a governmental backed or sanctioned COVID app was released to help tracing. It's similar to what Christiana mentioned earlier. One of the tactics that they were using in Korea to help slow down or flatten the curve. Although I find it interesting that since they've kind of had a second wave, they've pretty much stopped touting the benefits of that app. Anyway, this was just something similar was just released in Germany, and there's a lot of controversy around whether it's going to work, because there's a lot of privacy laws here that they don't have in Asia that are making the app function very differently. So I think that even if we're talking about using the same kinds of tools, the legal and regulatory framework in which we can apply those tools becomes very, very important. I spoke to one expert yesterday who actually helped develop the. I spoke to a different expert this morning who's a professor in artificial intelligence and presented to Parliament this past week, who said the app is not going to work the way it should be. So we're those discussions here, and I think that is a really important step in trying to come back from the changes that COVID has forced on us.
So from our standpoint, the app that we're building, Carly, we have a guest login and we have a Google login. So Google has its own analytics anyway. It's not anything new that we're going to be sourcing. And so what I've found is that, let's say we're in a rural village in North India and we're talking about an intervention that's in South India. There's a geolocator that's built in. So whenever somebody logs on from whichever device, you can see on the geolocator where the cluster is. Like, you see people logging in from whatever part of the world they're in. And I think that data alone, whether it's sociographic, demographic, or geographic data, it's helpful. We don't need to know the details of, your social security number or your address or anything like to pinpoint. But I think in terms of pandemic and disease outbreak, whatever we can find, right? Like if people are getting information or not, that's kind of a determinant, especially when you have migrant populations that are carriers, and we know that disease is spreading this way. So I think from our standpoint, we're not going as detailed into the data. We're taking what we need in order to get the job done, per se, and maybe that's helpful because we are a startup and we can make our own rules, and we're not going through extensive details in how far we can take the data. But I agree with you, like it's going to be a nightmare trying to get approvals for every single concept in every single country, because we are digital and we are global from the start. Like the app could have that issue down the road. And I also think that because we were, we didn't have that bureaucracy, we're able to move a lot faster than our competitors. And our events, Christiana, to be clear, we stopped doing these large events back in 2017. So we already made that transition. So luckily we don't have those contracts. We were going to sign one with the United Nations earlier this year. Manan and I talked to you about this conference that we were going to do it back in June. And luckily we never signed anything. So, we're off the hook in terms of like planning, and we hadn't reached out to sponsors. So I think like one event a year is the max that we do. And for those people in future, like who knows when or if that event's going to happen. And I noticed that the UN has already switched to hop-in conferences. Like this is as big as it gets, and they're already doing virtual conferences. And some of the speaking engagements that I had earlier this year, they're planning a year out now, hoping to have like an actual conference, but who knows if we were even ready at that point. But I think the whole industry is now thinking virtual, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. But it is what it is, and we're all here now. So it's like, we just do the best we can.
Yeah, I definitely hope that we will go back to large events sooner rather than later, or some mix. Again, it's this here, now we're here doing totally virtual. And it's because I'm missing the networking element. For example, the call we're on now is fabulous, and this conversation wouldn't be any better if we were live. But I would like to talk to the audience and see the audience and network afterward and talk to people. Yeah. So I think that the energy that you get when you're just in the room with someone is really missing. But I do like the convenience of being able to hop on a bunch of these virtual calls. So I hope we'll end up in the middle. But Anu, I'm curious, what went into your decision not to have the large events even before COVID back in 2017?
Good question.
Yeah. I would say our last event in Sweden was at NASDAQ. It was 1,400 women on the Nordic Stock Exchange floor talking about investing. And this was back in 2015, I think. And I had just finished, I'm so sorry, we have construction going on outside. We had an event in South Africa before, in Singapore, and it was we're all blockchain girls. And it was like every month there was a different conference in a different city. So to jump into this from that is like, it's a different pace. But when you're actually organizing all of those events, it's a physical toll. But what disturbed me the most is that the conversations that we were having were so incredible, but there were only 1,400 women in the room that got access to that information. And in my mind, I'm like, if the people in Africa could have heard this, or the people in Asia could have heard this would have been so much more impactful. And for me, it was a question of messaging. And at that point, I thought, well, if we could do this better, what would we do? And I said, we need to go virtual. We need to start thinking digital. And this was back in 2015. And so since that point till now, 5 years, I think we've got a 5-year head start as a result, because we wanted to connect more people. And I think this whole, we talk about opportunity versus crisis. The whole opportunity now is, that conference that I attended with UN Global Compact 2 days ago, it was on oceans. It was like some kind of UN conference. There were 22,000 participants. Now that room at the United Nations, Manana, when we were there last June, the Blockchain for Impact conference that you and I attended, could only hold 500 people. But now you've got 20,000 engaged voices. So in a way, I'm like, this is great, because if I can engage 25,000 women as opposed to 500 women, we've done our job, right? And we were moving the needle quicker. So I think, that it was foresight back then saying, how do we increase another zero? How do we take it from 1,400 to 14,000 to 140,000? How do we do it? And now we're getting more and more sophisticated with video conferencing and whatnot. But back then, there wasn't a Zoom, there wasn't a hop-in. I think tools are coming. So it's good.
Well, speaking of tools, so we're actually building such tool. So the other organization I'm involved with is called the Wonder Lab. and this is a design tech platform. So we have been kind of like a franchise model. It started in Purdue University, very much about inclusion and STEM education. So what we've been doing the past 5 years is we have been onboarding great curriculums that we find from independent providers and putting it online. And then we have been opening physical design maker spaces, which you can imagine being something between a WeWork and a design lab. So we've been launching this. We've launched it in China, Korea, and the US. And what's interesting is, so instantly, as we keep onboarding, the professor goes out and validates the curriculum. As we keep onboarding curriculum, all of a sudden, bam, 15 maker spaces have access to that curriculum, right? Most of the time it's with, we're have stakeholders are the universities and our governments. So it's low cost or free, this kind of education. And I do believe the trend, just the way MIT launched EduX, right? MIT, Harvard, a lot of the Ivy League universities and non-Ivy League have, in the United States, have launched a version of their education online for certificates. That's very powerful. That's very powerful. And as Anu said, you know, if we're in one room, not everyone can hear it. But that's why, you know, when this crisis happened, you know, I consulted with the Wonder Lab and consulted with other education providers. And what we have started to do, and Carly, I hope you'll enjoy our solution. We have started to blend the different providers. So we have an infrastructure where you can use Zoom if you want, you can use Hopin if you want, you can use Eventbrite if you want, but we have basically the main conferencing screen, and then we have breakout rooms, which is really nice. And we are entering a competition that's called Ideas for Africa. So we're going to see, okay, well, if we have access to all these cool conferences because we're providing the infrastructure, the tech for them, what would it look like? Kind of like how Anu is using the radio waves. What would it look like to get that information from that conference about engineering, to get it to Africa on the radio waves? So they don't have to be involved, but really, you know, getting on news content to Africa, getting those events content to Africa, this multi-stream content access to those who need it. So it's very aligned. So I'm happy to hear the work that Anu is doing as well.
Christiana, we're going to have an offline conversation about this. We need to do an offline conversation about how to link the two.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That'd be really cool. One of the things I wanted to mention about back to the regulation is that, yeah, I even had a call with one of our data scientists, and he's like, well, in Africa, we can do whatever we want. We can grab this and this and this data and this and this, and no one will really care. And I'm like, you know, we've got to take a step back. And I know that that information will be valuable and that information will be great, but let's roll it back a little bit, because the other thing is, when you have, okay, there's one side data that you're getting from users. The other side is broadcasting and intellectual property, which is this huge world. So even to the song that we're playing in the background before a speaker walks in, or if you're showing the video of someone else's video, is it licensed? Is it not licensed? So it's a really complicated. It's really complicated. So that's why basically with this broadcasting network, we're starting in Europe, and we're focused on content related to COVID economic relief and cultural dissemination, because these are two things that COVID-19 is specifically threatening. You know, our ability to share culture, our ability to meet in person, and the economy. So what we're doing, I don't know, Carly, I mean, I don't know if this is a pipe dream, but we were in the EU versus virus hackathon. We had conversations with the Commission, the European Commission, and we're trying to, just like the vaccine is getting fast tracked, we're trying to fast track a broadcasting licensing, to be able to get approved content to people who need it. So.
Manana, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. And my next question, let's talk about COVID strategy for the investors and some new industries, maybe products coming out of it. And let's talk about like the new game for the hospitality, maybe travel industry, and what's like what is new for the emerging technologies, how we can help improve this.
Sure. So we've already mentioned some on this call.
And maybe plus, yes, and maybe plus, maybe it could be like the advices for the fundraising strategy for the female investors, for the new funds, for the LPs, and for the startups, for the Fem-Tech.
Okay, we've already mentioned a couple industries on this call today that I think are really going to get ahead. Obviously, online services that replace the in-person services that we no longer have. I would just caution investors to look at what is short-term versus long-term. When people start going back to in-person meetings, what are they going to do and what are they going to leave out? The obvious industry that everyone's looking at right now is health. In fact, I just earlier judged a hackathon, the COVID-a-thon, sponsored by SingularityNet and Ocean Protocol, where submissions were submitted, projects were submitted for data-based applications that would support in an impactful way, support us in either another outbreak of COVID or some other pandemic. And it was absolutely encouraging to see, first of all, so many young people who were involved in this project, but also so many really great ideas for how we can attack COVID. And I can see through not just this hackathon or other hackathons, but in where investment money is going and where attention is going, that connectivity, even in health, is a big area. Delivery of goods. How do we replace the functions that we had before? And to Christiana's point, and what Anu was talking about as well, education is another industry where we're going to see a lot of movement. I'm a member of NEXUS. It's an impact investing group, and there's a lot of discussion there about how we can invest in online education in a way that will be most impactful. And there's been a lot of research on this, especially recently, that shows that certain types of education are actually done better online. If you're learning about space and you can watch this really cool high def, even with AR, VR assisted, here we're in space, we're looking at space. Students are going to remember that better. Some things apparently are better done in person. And I'm also hearing a lot of feedback from professors. I was a law school professor for 2 years, and I still stay in touch with some of my professor colleagues. And also here in Germany, professors are missing the interaction with their students. And sometimes if students are allowed to, block their cameras, it's like the professor's just talking into a void all day, every day. So there are some challenges as well with online education, but there are some areas and some methods that are better for online education. So I would say for investors looking for something that is longer term and where I think that the industry is not going to turn back, health and education and connectivity, service, delivery, and logistics are probably really great areas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would switch, maybe this is a little bit sad. I mean, I'm going to say it. Okay. I would switch health with entertainment. So the whole thing about, for example, telemedicine. I have a friend, he's raising for a great telemedicine app. It's phenomenal. It's so good, but to get people to invest in their health is a challenge. To get people to invest in entertainment is not. So I just think that I would love for health to be the top concern and the best investment opportunity, but I think it's more education, which is a stable environment that's always needed, right? And then also also entertainment, but definitely logistics as well. Because what do people need in a crisis? Food. They need food, right? So how is it going to get to them with shortages, with situations, with customs? How are they going to get the food? So I'm bullish on entertainment, education, and logistics, supply chain. And another note on what you mentioned, we had a client and about education, things online that are better. It's very, very interesting because we had a client that did an education platform, and he changed one thing and it increased completion rate by 20%. And that one thing was that they were these students were taking the TOEFL, so the teaching English as a second language certificate, so that they could get a job teaching English. So imagine, it's a pretty direct career route. You get the certificate, a bunch of jobs now open up, you become a teacher. It's pretty straightforward. You know, not all degrees are straightforward. You know, ask my college, about that. You know, not all degrees are straightforward. But what he changed in the company was he gave each student a mentor. So it was basically a person that they could contact when they had a question, when they had something that they needed. So it was the TOEFL mentor, your assigned mentor, right? Or your assigned counselor. And what he found was it didn't actually take much from his human resources. Those mentors were rarely contacted. However, completion rate increased 20% because knowing and thinking that someone is there for you, like your mom is watching, I got to get my homework done, right? It's kind of that accountability, that virtual kind of accountability that gets you, okay, oh man, I got to do my homework. My mentor, Sandy, she's going to be on it, and if I have questions, she's there for me too. So having a companion. So instead of you just going to class and coming back and you're alone, this is kind of feeling that you're in part of a community. You're accountable to that, similar to how you're accountable to your grades. But in a world where I think maybe 50% of the population will now have to be upskilled or retrained, they're not all going to school. Not all can afford a university. University is for children transitioning to adulthood for the most part, as far as the real structure. Then we have continuing ed. Then we have this, now we all need to be retrained. So this is majority going to happen maybe in a community college or online. And you can replicate that sense of university, campus, community, accountability with certain mechanisms in tech and humans, yeah.
No, I can't believe I forgot food. You brought up food. Agri-tech was getting very, very hot, especially here before COVID. And I think we've realized now how important it is, more than ever, how important it is. Yeah. So another big area.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at artificial intelligence. Obviously, that's like I've been teetering since last June. Since I last saw you, Manana, during the VentureBeat Artificial Intelligence Summit in San Francisco. Like, I've been playing with it, and now I know it's only a year ago, but now it's become more vital than anything. And if you look at the future of work and the conversations that people are having, a lot of the jobs are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. And so I feel like if I was an investor, I'm going in that direction, because this is honestly the future. And with all of the, like, even these Zoom calls, like, there's going to be AI in the background. My daughter, who was bugging me at the beginning of the call, she's have been on TikTok. Have you noticed? TikTok. Yes or no? What? Are you doing TikTok yourself?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
So Anu, how do you feel about the safety of TikTok? Because I have a friend who has a 6-year-old, and she says weird things now. She's saying all these weird phrases. Like, who taught her how to say that? She told her babysitter, I have the power to fire you. You're not necessary in this situation. She's just saying weird things. She's saying, and she was not taught that, because her parents are super humble and super nice.
So I'm not really happy with TikTok, but it's a great, like, in our day, in our generation, it was video games. Like, kids are addicted to video games. Like, now it's like they have this social media, like everybody's on YouTube and they all want to be YouTube stars at that age. Like, it's a trend. Every day they check their likes, how many people are following me. Like, it's a whole nother generation. I kind of feel like they have the attention span of Tinder for kids, like that they're just swiping constantly, like, oh, boring.
Wow. For kids.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's seriously, that's what it is. That's basically TikTok, is like you're going to see who your favorites are, and it's a competition. Now there's like, the girls in her school have formed a club, and unless you make 10 videos a day, you're kicked out of the club. And it's like, like, yes, I think it's leadership, and I know where she's getting it from. She's trying to, like, keep herself active and busy, but at the same time, it's like, do we really want our kids? And this is another thing. Ed tech. I think ed tech for sure is like definitely going to boom during now, but need to be like really selective with. I'm worried about lawsuits eventually. Like some they're gonna get hit by COPPA or something. Like, I'm not sure, but TikTok is Chinese, as you know. Everything is archived, and just the patterns, and just, it's kind of creepy, right? And they know exactly where you are. So with my daughter, we've just been concerned about, the weird people getting a hold of like these children's profiles, and some of the dances and whatnot of these teenage girls. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's not even Miami, like, kosher. It's like, what are you teaching the girls? Like, all the work that we're doing, the four of us right now, it's completely reversed with TikTok. Like, how we want to position our girls, completely reversed.
Right.
I mean, even YouTube. So for example, I go to, and this is the thing, there are certain things that are uncontrollable. So for example, I go to Dominican Republic, where my parents from, and I see my little cousins, or my second, third cousins, and they are 10 years old. This happened, I think 3 years ago. I went for Easter, 10 years old. And I'm like, how are you moving your body like that? Like, why, how, and what is going on? And they're like, well, we don't want to be boring when we get older and go to parties. So we watch YouTube videos and we practice and practice and practice. And this is the result. And I'm just, wow. And so one of the things, one of the leaders that I'm really keen on listening to and following is Jack from Twitter. He's built a very, a great network, and he asks the question, what are we doing to create transparent, ethical, and explainable algorithms that are recommending these content to our children? Well, he didn't say to our children, he said to the world, but I'm saying to our children, right? So how are we, there's so much content there, especially in a platform like YouTube, or even Facebook and Twitter, right? And what are those AIs doing? Are they profit driven? Are they trying to get more ads in? Are they trying to control minds? Or are they value driven towards the consumer? And I mean, is there a code of ethics? Like, the doctors do no harm. Is there a code of ethics for data scientists and AI?
Oh gosh, we have so little time left, and ethics and AI is something I would love to talk about for a long time. But there's something that's something that you both mentioned that I think, especially for investors, is really important. AI. AI is a process, not a product. I firmly believe this fundamentally, and also from an investment perspective. I know you said there's AI in the background, and that I think if you're looking for one that is contemplating all of these things, one that is improving the process, is really what you want to look for. And a lot of times these AI companies kind of package it like sellable product versus a sellable process, an integrated process. So I would say that from an investment perspective, that's kind of the common thread of what we're saying now. I I don't have kids, so I'm just absolutely blown away by everything you were just saying, and I'm gonna have to take the weekend to digest all of that.
Oh my goodness, it's insane. It's so insane. And it's just, and it's sad because the thing is, this 6-year-old that I mentioned, she's so brilliant. She's so smart, and she likes her arts. And this is what things have been exacerbated with COVID, because she used to be in ballet, theater arts, sports, and now she's home begging for her phone to get on TikTok, right?
No,
and her mom,
energy to go. Yeah.
she needs to she has so much in her, right? But her mom works remotely, but just had a baby, right? So it's just like, okay, I can't really deal with my 6-year-old and the baby, and it's just, wow. So they have so much energy, they need an outlet, and they're being led to these outlets that are not safe for them. That's
we got a puppy. We got a puppy. That's where the energy's going now.
Teach them that's the solution. Just get
It's like,
name them AI.
Exactly. The puppy's like looking at AI now. It's like TikTok.
The puppy does sentiment analysis because it can tell how you're feeling.
Aria, can you bring Mila?
Oh my God.
This is hilarious. So my puppy's coming up right now. Hang on, it's coming. So I wanted to say one more thing. So when the financial crisis happened, this was back in the day, my former business was getting private equity funds to meet with institutional investors in the Nordics and the Middle East. So I would take them on roadshows, and it was connecting the dots, like where big money is moving to these funds. And I have been talking to a group of women now about doing the same thing for women-led funds, creating a membership club, investment club, where it's only people. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, what's its name?
What's his name? Is it him or her?
It's a girl.
Wow, she's so cute. Carly, what's yours? Is it a girl or a boy?
This is she acts like a boy, so we're gender neutral. This is Pili Aloha. Pili Aloha's from Hawaii.
Wow.
She has an Instagram page.
Oh my goodness, I love her. The puppy. So cool.
Yeah, so that's the solution to COVID. Get a dog.
Get a dog. Out of all of this,
dogs,
go get puppy.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
get puppy. There you go.
Oh yeah.
So this investment club, we're looking at women in the Middle East specifically. They're used to doing Zoom calls and whatnot, and it's deal flow. It's a very concentrated deal flow, and it's women who are traditionally private equity investors that are going to spearhead this, not people who are sometimes investors and sometimes not, but these are like very seasoned LPs, institutional investors who bring deal flow to the table. And it's going to be a very exclusive group that's coming under Women Investing in Women. So when I said we positioned the conference business, Women Investing in Women was seeded by doing these roundtables for men. That's how the money, like all the seed capital initially came from these private equity roundtables for men. So now that we have this digital platform, we're going to reintroduce those roundtables for women now, and then try to move these big dollars that are being reinvested into tech and funds towards women. So that's kind of what.
I'm really glad you said that, because that's one of the things that I believe in too. So you said it came, so sometimes, and I don't want to talk about this now, but with Black Lives Matter and with coronavirus and with women issues, right? So it's not, some people stand going the other side of the stream and just women. But the thing is, sometimes the men don't understand what's happening, don't understand the barrier. They're like, oh, wow. There was a woman that came in to talk about women who code in Afghanistan. And there was a group full of Wall Street guys. And they came out and they were just like, women have those issues? I didn't know. I had no idea. But we have to be talking to them, being at the table with them, so they realize, and they'll be generous, and they will join on board. It's women and advocates for women, and then along with the other issues that we are dealing with. But it's not about shunning the other side. It's about the dialogue, opening the conversation with grace and tolerance, because some people don't know what's really the issue.
Yeah, I think women's issues may take a bit of a back seat right now while we globally address a racial inequality, and that's okay. Because a lack of inequality, yes, it's okay. A lack of inequality for any group is bad.
We got them both, right, Christiana? We have it from both ways, racial and gender, you and I.
But for me, I never saw that or see that, because I don't see the other side as a threat. I see the other side as maybe lacking understanding, not being able to empathize with my needs and my particular, so I usually have to, I hear a comment or something happens, I take five, and I come back, but I think, like you said, Carly, there's a big issue right now. And in the end, for me, for someone who doesn't see gender, doesn't see race, only sees experience and ethics, who you are, what your core drive is, that's what I identify and I discriminate against. But it's a world that, it's a conversation that needs to be had, and needs to be had now, right? Wow.
I know that wasn't on the agenda to bring that up, but it's hard. I mean, you just can't.
It's hard not.
It is so relevant, and right, with everything going on with COVID and everything, it's
that's my mom.
It's gonna come up. Hi, Mom.
Great. Wow, guys, this was so good. Thanks, Manana, for getting us together.
Yeah, it was good to see everybody virtually.
Yeah, and what I've offered Manana is, next time she wants to host this, she can use it as our platform, and we can have breakout talks. We have breakout places. So I've been talking to Manana about having that. So next time, maybe we'll have some audience and some breakouts.
Yes, next Friday.
Oh, it's next Friday. Okay.
Yes, and like the last question. Yes, and last question, maybe it's should be your professional advice for our entrepreneurs and our fundraising online. What should be like the next steps and like this source?
Yeah, I mean, I know some people are saying there's no funds. Some people are saying people are not deploying. I mean, any investor is going to want to take their time to analyze the market. So I would say, don't be naive to think that there's just abundance of funds. But then again, don't be naive to think that there isn't an abundance of funds. I always kind of say, this is my favorite phrase to say, is count on everything and count on nothing. And my first advice is build rapport. In the end, you're getting into a deep relationship with whoever funds you. So build rapport, watch their sessions, ask their questions, follow them. Don't troll them, but follow them, learn, read their articles, build rapport, because do you really want to marry this person? So don't look at funding as an amount to get, but think about all the relationships of those humans that are going to be in your organization. So build rapport. If right now they say they're not deploying, a lot of times I tell my product leaders, I said, make your wish list right now. Go try to find them. Go try to hang out with them and be like, hey, I'm not ready yet, but I have this kind of product. I'm probably going to contact you in 6 months to a year. Start the relationship, and make sure you know who you're talking about. If you're an investor who invests in med tech, don't pitch a travel agency. You have to know your customer, know your investor.
That is solid advice. Bringing on the wrong investor can ruin your company. So I would advise entrepreneurs raising funds to look at all types of fundraising. There is tremendous pressure in the startup scene to go with the VC model, but that comes with it certain expectations about growth. And if I hear the word unicorn one more time, I think my head is going to explode. You want to look at the type of growth you want for your company. I mean, is that unicorn IPO model really what you want? Would family office backing work better for you? That's the model that the company I'm working with, Fathom, has fundraising on the family office side, which has done well for this company, because of course, anytime you bring on an investor, they want to get their money back, they want to make returns, and so you have certain expectations. But it is a very different type of pressure than traditional VC. And then loans. There's certain organizations out there, certain banks. I tend to favor Silicon Valley Bank. They do a really great job at non-traditional loans for startups and scale-ups. And I would recommend look at all those types of fundings, what type of support you need, what type of support you will get from that type of investor, and strategically choose essentially the way you want to pay them back, because that's at the end of the day what they're looking for.
Wow,
so I'm on the startup side, obviously, and have been on the investor side previously. And so what I did is I cherry picked my angel investors. They were all mission oriented. We had a convertible note, and that convertible note has recycled a couple times now. But everyone knows that the mission is critical, and we're just moving along. And as long as I keep innovating and I keep moving forward, I don't get calls from them. I don't get questions from them. Some of them have written it off as a donation. I don't know. But ultimately, it's really pick investors who believe in you, number one, first and foremost. And what you are working on should be something that they're passionate about. And if you can find that fit, the alignment from day one, it's a very good foundation. It's worked for me. I'm saying it because I've tried it and I've done it. We are now in the process of raising a seed round, as I mentioned. And what's critical for me, I've been interviewing investors as they've been interviewing me throughout this whole quarantine process. And I give them regular updates, like weekly or bi-monthly updates. And they see everything on WhatsApp and how we're growing and progressing. And one of the things that I would say is I have not pigeonholed myself to look for investors only in my region. So first investor was in Shanghai. I've got another one in Munich I'm talking to. Wow. I've got one in New York, one in Dubai that I'm speaking with. And this space of women's media, women's digital media, it's global. Like the same issues that we have here are relevant in other parts of the world. 2 out of 5 women in the world are women of color. So I really want my next round. It's true. If you think about it, Latinas, African Americans, and just look at South Asia as a whole, like that's a lot of brown women, right? So ultimately, we want our cap table to be reflected. Like we want that diversity. 55% of our audience, Christiana, as you were mentioning earlier, are actually men. The 1 million followers, 55% are men. I would say we've got an equal balance of investors, men and women, but we never discounted the men from the beginning, because if you look at how much they've invested, the men probably make up 85% of the amount invested, even though it's 50-50. Mm-hmm. Like men tend to write bigger checks. So I would say definitely look for diversity. Look for people that are complementary to whatever you're working on in your venture. And for me, I'm looking for technology experts. I'm looking for finance experts, because ultimately their networks come along with it. So your money needs to be strategic. If you're taking in these investors, make sure that they have a value add on what are they bringing to you. And that comes with confidence and what you have to offer. So just be very clear on what it is that you have at the table. And be cautious, because ultimately you're married to these people for however long. And as long as you have patient investors and mission-driven investors, this is a good time to be raising. It's a good time to be talking, if anything. And the best deals, I think, are going to elevate themselves, because it's crisis mode. And if you can get technology that's working and that's needed and it's market-driven, I mean, what better situation? So.
Okay, Anu, Carly, and Christiana, thank you for this live, and see you in New York City.
Yes.
You move around, girl.
Thank
like it's hard
so
to keep
much.
up with you.
Yeah, girl power. Girl power. Thank you. See you.
And thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Be safe, everyone.
Yes. See you, girls.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.